4 years ago today, I ranked every execution from the Danganronpa series from the worst to the best. This was my first ever YouTube video to gain over 100k views, and it gained a lot more attention than I ever would have anticipated. Over 200,000 views and over 1,000 comments, it was unlike anything I ever experienced at the time. And it also proved to me that talking about characters dying tends to get a lot of views, you damn sadists. As the years have gone by, I've wanted to remake this list time and time again because, in my opinion, yeah, that list was far from perfect. With a lot of time to think about my ranking, I've reflected and re-ranked every single execution, and I truly believe this list is significantly better. While I've distanced myself from Danganronpa these last several years, I believe re-ranking this list is the best way for me to give the series a proper send-off because honestly, I don't really see myself coming back to the series for any future videos, but who knows, that could always change. Just like before, I'm mainly going to be ranking these executions based on three main factors: creativity, brutality, and impact. Additionally, it's also important to take into account how the execution connects to the character and their sins that ultimately led to their demise. Picking up on any symbolism sprinkled throughout the brutal death scenes, which I feel like is something I did not take enough care with in the previous list. As always, spoiler warning and reminder that this is just my opinion and to be civil, yada yada yada, and without further distractions, it's punishment time. Again.
You are unattractive in the face region. You are your father's offspring because he is ugly as well. Dap.
Danganronpa V3's conclusion is polarizing to say the least. Over the years, this ending has seen a lot of criticism from fans, but it's also had a lot of fans defending it as well. Regardless of how you feel about the ending of V3, I think most of us can agree that V3's final execution, and technically Danganronpa's final execution overall, is a pretty huge letdown. Essentially, it boils down to Kibo destroying the entire facility so the remaining survivors can escape. We get one final farewell from everyone's favorite mastermind, Tsumugi and Monokuma, and they meet their end by getting the Caesar Zeppeli treatment. For being the final execution in the series, it's incredibly bare bones. In fact, its lameness splats it easily on the bottom spot of the list. Danganronpa 2's final execution also finds itself towards the bottom, but it is leaps and bounds more interesting than V3's. Junko gets her comeuppance for the second time, this time with the power of magical girl Monami and the power of apple spinning beach ball. It's cool for what it is, but there's absolutely no way it's placing any higher, especially because it's just incredibly out of place compared to everything else on this list. The execution of Chihiro's sentient AI is crushing, to say the least. Wow, my humor has not improved over 4 years. That's actually really sad. As I stated in the original video, this execution is pretty meaningless since Alter Ego technically doesn't die here anyways, meaning Monokuma just destroyed a perfectly good laptop. It gets a small boost because it's slightly shocking on first viewing, but if it wasn't for that, it would be dead last on the list. Four years later, and I still stand by the fact that Mikan has the worst execution of the main student body and deserves so much better. This execution is basically a metaphor for an overstimulated orgasm. Yeah, you heard that right. Look, I know that a huge characteristic of Mikan is her horniness and it's connected to her trauma, but this execution is such a shallow representation of her character. I wish there was more layers to really reveal the tragedy of her life. Monokuma pumps a mechanical arm with something that's supposed to represent some kind of stimulant drug that sends the arm into overdrive and it flies into space while Mikan is consumed with pleasure. This execution isn't necessarily awful, but there was so much wasted potential, and it's also one of the shortest executions in the series too. Mikan's execution can be cast off into space to never return.
Oh damn.
The opening cutscene for the first Danganronpa game is the principal of Hope's Peak Academy being rocketed to his demise. Upon first viewing, this execution leaves the player with a lot of questions, and this does a phenomenal job of setting the tone for what's to come. It only lands on the lower half of this list because, well, it's just simply outdone by everything else that comes after it. But its impact cannot be denied. It left quite a big hole in the ground. This execution is special because unlike any other execution, it has two different versions. What makes this execution so neat is that it fits both Kyoko and Makoto. It fits Kyoko since her father is the principal of the school, and it fits Makoto, well, because he's the ultimate lucky student, of course. I hate putting this one so low, the suspense factor on this one is supreme, but other than that, it doesn't really match the intensity, creativity, or brutality of its competitors. No one had a larger change in my list placement than Gonta for his execution. In my original video, I had him at number 5, but the more I rewatched this execution, the more I really just start to see its flaws. There are some great elements here. I think Gonta suffering from a swarm of bugs and stings is the right approach, but you know what drags this execution down? Those damn monokids. Why is Monophony pregnant? This is... what? I am all for weird shit, but this had nothing to do with Gonta. It just exists so 2 monokids could die for shock value. Plus, I think it would have been more clever for 2 monokids to die during Chapter 3 when double murders are a staple in the series, but... oh well, I guess. Conceptually, the idea of a bug being birthed out and delivering the final blow works and fits the theme, but the emotional impact of the execution feels extremely disconnected from the events happening on screen. This is easily one of the weirdest watches, and not in a good way. Mondo also sees a slight drop from my original placement, and it's largely because, well, it's good, but it's relatively lackluster compared to the other ones higher on the list. Mondo dying from intense motion via spinning in a cage and electrocution is a great concept, and fits the talent. But it's over before you can blink, which I guess is the point, but I wish there was more elements that were connected to him as a character. I think the execution could have been improved if there was something else preceding him entering the cage of death, maybe something relating to his brother, just as an example. If it weren't for the buttery goodness at the end, this would have landed lower, but come on, it's Mondo butter. So it gets some Mondo bonus points.
Sometimes the world looks perfect. Nothing.
Of all the in-game executions, the first game is easily the best, and it's not even close. Junko finishes off the killing game by withstanding every single previous execution in the game. While some people may call this lazy, I think this perfectly fits her character as someone who gets bored easily, and has a desperate addiction to despair. It doesn't reach the top 10, mainly because while this is undeniably hilarious, this is just a combination of every previous execution. Great concept, funny delivery, and a brilliant way to end the first game. Landing in the top 10 and in a volcano is Teru Teru. Teru Teru easily has the most amusing execution out of everybody. Monokuma uses a helicopter to fire rockets filled with egg and flour at Teru Teru. Then he picks him up and drops him in a volcano to be deep fried. Hilarious and creative. Although I struggle to put it any higher, largely because, well, it's got a lot of comedic value, but nothing much outside of that.
Oh shit, here comes Pac-Man.
Chiaki's execution is pretty clever, but not nearly as amazing as I think it could have been. Mainly containing references to classic video games such as Space Invaders and Tetris, Chiaki's execution does a great job fitting her talent, but outside of that, there isn't really much else to elevate this execution upwards on the list. Hell, this execution doesn't even touch how brutal Chiaki's fate was in the anime. A good execution for sure, and I can definitely see why some people may have it higher, but there are definitely better ones in my eyes. Celeste's execution contains one thing I love most in executions. Witch burnings. I mean, irony. Celeste's execution starts out as a true old-fashioned burn the witch display until Monokuma ruins her orderly and pristine execution by running her over with a fire truck. This execution is quite brief, but the subverted expectations elevates it quite a bit.
Even the babies are one of the most dangerous animals in the world, so I built this cage to keep them secure so there's no possible— oh my god.
Gundam Tanaka's execution strikes a good balance of funny, creative, and emotional. Gundam meets his end doing exactly what led him to kill in the first place, to protect his hamsters. I really enjoy the Fullmetal Alchemist reference, and I also find this to be arguably the most well-balanced execution in the series. That'll do, Gundam. That'll do.
If you want to play baseball, you gotta be the baseball.
Leon's execution is the first student execution in the series, which automatically makes it one of the most memorable, as it's the first time the player witnesses the horror of Monokuma's terrorizing executions. What makes Leon's execution work so well is that it's one of the most realistic in the entire franchise. Many of the executions in the future entries try to make the executions more and more ridiculous and over the top, while this one is just good old-fashioned brutality. Leon is pummeled with 1,000 baseballs at a highly intense speed, while the rest of the classmates just watch in absolute horror. This lands so high on the list because it's realistic, memorable, and one of the most horrifying to watch. A blast to the past, Kaito's execution is an extremely cool throwback to the first ever cutscene of Danganronpa, as we mentioned before, Jin Kirigiri's execution. Instead of simply being blasted into space, Kaito drills all the way through the Earth's core and out the other side, which would probably destroy the planet, but we'll just ignore that. Once Kaito finally makes it into space, he dies from poison before his execution can finish. On top of this, he died fulfilling his lifelong dream of going to space, making it one of the only times the character dies with a smile. Being the last true student execution in the series, Kaito's proves to be amongst the best and hits very high emotionally and creatively.
I thought you were bae. Turns out you're just fam. Bruh.
Korekiyo remains in the exact same placement as my original list. I still love it just as much as I did before. It perfectly fits his talent, it's extremely brutal, this dude is literally boiled alive, and it's also tragic as well. Monokuma and Korekiyo's sister reject his spirit, destroying it with salt. What can I say that I didn't say in my original video? It's just done extremely well, and is still amongst one of my favorites in Danganronpa. The placement of Kaede's execution in my original video had me on blast, with dozens of comments constantly telling me how wrong I was to have it in the lower half of my list. And, well, you guys win. This execution has grown on me immensely. Kaede's execution is great because not only is it tragic, it's got a lot of small details that connect to her character and talent, and even just the overall story. And it's also grotesquely humorous as well. You guys also pointed out some really cool details I didn't even realize upon first viewing, such as Kaede not touching any of the black keys to hint at the fact that she was never the Blackened in the first place. Kaede's execution is one of the most humiliating and cruel executions in the series, which puts it in the top 3, and I can see why a lot of you guys had this at your number 1. Alright team, we need to step up our executions for the third Danganronpa game. What do we do? If I may sir, I have an idea. What if we make one of the characters climb a thorned vine, while people throw signs at them? And fuck it, we'll also throw in some buzzsaws as well. Oh, and also, when they get to the top, they'll fall all the way back down and die. Sir, you are a genius! Someone get this man a promotion! I know, my first placement is the exact same as the original list. Boring, boo, I know. Don't blame me for the creators making Pekko's execution peak emotional damage, okay? Pekko is being controlled by Monokuma like a voodoo doll, slicing and dicing dummies at an unnatural speed, presumably dislocating her bones and harming her body in the process. What really makes this execution the absolute best is the conclusion when Pekko slices Fuyuhiko, the man she swore to protect with her life. This fills her with an immense despair as the dummy robots surround her and stab her to death with katanas. God, it's brutal, creative, and arguably has one of the most emotional conclusions to any execution. And it's also the main turning point for Fuyuhiko's character development within the game, which in my opinion is one of the best character developments out of any of the characters. With all this in mind, Pekko-yama... Did I just say Pekko-yama? Pekko-yama's tragic execution earns the number 1 spot. There we go. It took 4 years, but I've done it. Every Danganronpa execution has successfully been re-ranked, and honestly, I am much happier with this list than my original one. While this list could very well change for me another 4 years down the line, I don't have any intention of re-ranking this list again, so I'll consider this my definitive ranking. Additionally, I don't plan on re-ranking the Danganronpa Trials or the Body Discoveries because honestly, my opinion on those have not changed to such a large degree to where I would really need to re-rank them, so if you guys want to see more Danganronpa rankings, I guess go back and watch those. As much as I love Danganronpa, I really think this will be my conclusive visit to the series, unless Kodaka decides to make more Danganronpa games in the future, and I really don't have much interest in Tribe 9 or any of his other releases, at least at the moment. I think it's about time for me to move on with my content and explore other game franchises and such. Thank you all so much for watching, and here's to my return to YouTube. This is my first true YouTube video in like 3 years. It's kind of crazy. I think it's about time for me to get back into the swing of things. I mean, a 3-year break is a 3-year break. Be sure to subscribe to my channel to see my future content. I also stream 4 to 5 days a week on Twitch and TikTok. I mainly stream Hoyoverse games such as Genshin Impact and Star Rail, but I also play a variety of games as well. Additionally, I have a Discord server with a community of hundreds, so be sure to come by to talk about games, movies, and really anything you desire. There's a channel dedicated to Danganronpa if that's your interest. Finally, if you have any suggestions of future videos, please let me know and I'll definitely consider them. I have several video ideas that have been lying dormant in my mind for years, so don't worry, I got plenty of content coming. But for now, I think it's time to conclude. Stay cool and see you soon.